It is Wednesday morning. We welcome you to yet another edition of Tea na European Union live on ZMBC Radio 2. I'm your host. My name is Dennis Ilukena on this particular edition of the program. Now, this morning, my guest is a nutrition specialist with UNICEF. She has worked in the nutrition sector in Zambia for 20 years and of course worked in government and of course on the USAID project before joining the United Nations. And she is a part of the Scaling Up Nutrition project being managed by UNICEF and other UN agencies, being funded by the European Union and other donors. This is none other than Ruth Siyandi. It's good to have you on the program and hoping we're going to enjoy the tea.
Thank you very much. Good morning and good morning to the listeners.
Great. So we're going to discuss the topic on the EU and UNICEF collaborations as a part of the Scaling Up Nutrition Alliance against malnutrition. And we guess as we zero it down to this a particular topic, our listeners out there will follow just like they have done with the many programs that we have brought to them on these segments. Because if you remember very well, this program comes to you every Wednesday and of course Friday at 7:30. So let's begin by maybe looking at what the Scaling Up Nutrition SUN Alliance is and what UNICEF is playing in terms of the roles in this project.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, the SUN Alliance is a global alliance which is also mirrored at country level. So this is where we realize globally that we are not reducing the levels of malnutrition at a rate that we need to, and specifically what we call stunting. This is height for age. So together we have partners in the alliance. They are donors from which the European Union belongs. There's the UN, for which UNICEF is a part. There's the business sector. There's the civil society and the academia and research. So you have these different networks, even within countries, that work together to see how can they contribute to reducing stunting. And specifically for UNICEF at a global level, we do participate and contribute. And here in Zambia, we are part of the partners that are also working to contribute to reducing, especially the focus of stunting reduction in the country.
I know you've alluded to some of the partners that you have in this alliance, but would want to go back and look at maybe how many they are and how it is it has been supporting the European Union, how it is being supported by the European Union.
Okay, from the partnership level, the European Union is part of the what we would call donors, but more the cooperating partners who are making contributions both financially and technically to make sure that there are resources available to make sure that as we implement the program, we are implementing it in a manner that will help us scale up and realize our desired outcomes, which will see the nutrition being reduced. So the partners within any network will be many. Like for the donors in Zambia, there's so many. There's the German government, there's the UK government, we have USAID, and we have the Swedish, we have the Irish Aid, and even in the UN, we also have World Food Program, Food and Agriculture Organization, World Health Organization, and also most importantly, government itself is in the lead through the National Food and Nutrition Commission. They are coordinating the Scaling Up Nutrition Program. So each of these partners have a specific role within their mandate to contribute together to support the national program.
Our listeners out there would want maybe to know maybe the impact of the Scaling Up Nutrition project, especially in this second phase.
Well, the impact is it's a bit early to talk about impact, but let's talk about maybe the expected impact. The Scaling Up Nutrition focuses on scaling up, meaning if we were at 10%, we're trying to reach 80-90% of whatever interventions are being done in the various sectors, be it health, agriculture, or water and sanitation. And so we work towards making sure that we work together and trying to see how do we actually push these interventions so that they are able to be practiced and some of them, in most cases, they're not very complicated, although sometimes they cost resources. For example, for health, it's just making what we've already known, like making mothers practice exclusive breastfeeding, which is just breast milk only, making sure the women take their iron and folate. The water and sanitation, we want them to practice what we know. We wash our hands. We make sure that when we're feeding children, the sanitation is actually happening in a manner that is important to realize the outcome. So the impact will be seen if we scale up to reach a high level of coverage of interventions, and that our target group, our beneficiaries, are practicing what they need to, where they are, so that we're able to have this reduction happen, because the malnutrition happens at an individual level. So whilst there are resources and policies being supported out there through the sector ministries, finally we need the households to have the convergence of the intervention. So it's not one or the other, but a complement of the various interventions that are recommended.
Okay, great. Now, what explanation can you give, to someone that would want to ask you that malnutrition is still a very present phenomenon in Zambia, and we know that Zambia has so many agricultural resources?
The first reaction is that what we must know is that what we have learned even in the scaling up nutrition area is that and we've known also for us in nutrition that it's not one thing that contributes to malnutrition. It's agriculture, it's health, it's water and sanitation. We have even studies that have shown that where the stunting rates are high, or children that had high stunting, even in the last demographic health survey, those that had challenges with water and sanitation had higher challenges. So even water and sanitation and agriculture. But that said, we need to know that there are several factors that affect, whether at policy level and at individual level, the intake, the quality of nutrients, and what the body needs. So, and malnutrition, in a simpler term, is bad nutrition. So it can be under or over. And in the scaling up nutrition, we focus on stunting, which is height for age. But basically, it's meaning there's a deficit in the intake, and it could be that maybe the person is unwell, or the quality and the quantity is not being consumed. So then you have to ask why. Why isn't this mother having enough? Is it that there's a food shortage in the home? Is it that she's not eating the right foods? Because sometimes we always think it's poverty. It's not poverty. You may choose between buying a fizzy drink and an apple or a banana or a small sachet of milk. So there are behaviors, there are policies, there are several things. But definitely we can also maybe just help our listeners learn that we are improving from where we were like in 1992 to date. The stunting, what we have, even reduced from the last figures we had in 2013, 2014. So we are making progress, but we need to do more. And it includes agriculture, health, water and sanitation, and several other sectors, including social protection, to help reduce malnutrition. So the main focus of the SUN is integration at program level, and also making sure the interventions converge at household level. Then we're going to get the reduction in a faster manner.
Great. You're listening to Tea in the European Union live on ZMBC Radio 2. Remember, we are on every Wednesdays and, of course, Fridays at 7:30. And remember that the topic that we're discussing this particular morning is how are EU and UNICEF collaborating as part of the SUN Alliance against malnutrition. And remember that SUN is part of the EU for Mulimi project. And if you want further information on that, you can get us at EU for Mulimi on Facebook, Instagram, and of course on Twitter. Wednesday edition of Tea in the European Union live on ZMBC Radio 2, and this particular morning my guest is Ruth Siyandi, nutrition specialist with UNICEF. She has worked in the nutrition sector in Zambia for 20 years, worked in government as well as the USAID project before joining the UN, and she is part of the SUN project being managed by UNICEF and other UN agencies, funded by the European Union and other donors. Like I did mention much earlier, that this morning we are looking at how EU and UNICEF are collaborating as part of the Sun Alliance against malnutrition. Now, let's get to look at maybe the drivers of malnutrition. What are the key drivers of malnutrition, and what are the main answers that we should look up to?
The drivers for malnutrition are at various levels. We cannot say it's this one or two. As I explained, we are focusing, malnutrition is broader because even like anemia, that's malnutrition, but for the scaling up nutrition, it's stunting. There are several. Firstly, even for what we call nutrition-specific interventions, we need our mothers to practice the recommended things like exclusive breastfeeding, making sure their children between 6 to 24 months, they're fed adequately, both frequently and the quality. Like I gave an example before we went on a brief break, that we have choices to make within the resources we have.
Yes.
Of course, where we don't have, it's much harder. But if you give a child even a 10 kwacha, what food would you buy? Would you be buying the smallest pack of milk, or would you be buying a fizzy drink, or some of these other foods? So sometimes it's the quality and the quantity, but also water and sanitation. Even if you have adequate food, if you are not practicing good sanitation, hygiene and sanitation practices, it is a problem, because we have found diarrheas in most of our children which were not necessary if they had practiced better nutrition. So a child will become malnourished just because of diarrhea, because they are losing the nutrients. So when you come to agriculture, we still need to have the food there, and food which is safe. So you can give the food which is enough, but the food is not safe. So even the agriculture sector, in terms of making sure in the bigger context that there's enough food and that the quality of the food is safe, is equally important. So we have to look at even basic things like income. For example, some savings group have been able to help young mothers to be able to get some income that can make them have a livelihood. There are programs that they have in agriculture, like the Pass On for chickens and others, where they can have chickens, some which lay eggs, and you improve access to a better nutrition for that particular child. So they are multifaceted. It can be water and sanitation, it can be agriculture and food, it can be health. So we have to look at all of them together. We cannot say we'll look at agriculture. No, this is what we have realized, and that's what the whole scaling up nutrition is about. We converge and attack malnutrition, for lack of a better term, in a multifaceted manner. So the key line ministries and the partners working with those, and including even the partnership with the community volunteers, whether they are in water and sanitation or health, it's all about bringing and working together the interventions so that our communities can benefit.
Great.
Those interventions.
Now, coming together, planning, trying to find answers to all these solutions. At times there are some external forces that come into play and maybe affect one or two steps that one would have loved to take in terms of reaching their goal. The issue of the Ukraine conflict, could this worsen the situation in terms of what we are discussing today?
Yes, it could, but I'll summarize it by saying there have been 3 aspects that are looked at that may affect us, and this is mainly related to the food, energy, and finance. An example is if resources that were meant for the interventions that help us in nutrition have to be deviated because of the war, definitely, then we ultimately would be affected. But even the energy, because if we have to spend more on the energy because there's a deficit, and even just the food, for example, there have been some links to saying that because maybe the cost of fertilizer would go up globally, then it affects farmers on how they produce. So at a global level, we can say that. But basically, I can say that every country has ways in which we have to mitigate disaster. So it's about, first of all, globally or regionally, they come together and see how do they mitigate the impact. And at a country level, then you have to see, are you looking at the net deficit potential for food, or is it the access to finance? How do we manage that? Because sometimes you may have had pledges to do something, and then they are supporting the war because it's a humanitarian crisis. So at a broader level, those things can happen. But ultimately, government with partners, they're able to plan and see how to mitigate, which means you already know, so you have to see as a country, how do you make changes that will make sure that the impact, if at all it comes, is not as harsh on the individual country.
Great. Now, as we conclude on this very interesting topic for this morning, tea, how long do you think it will take for malnutrition to disappear in Zambia? Or should we expect another scaling up, nutrition 3 or even more phases?
I'll answer the question by helping put the context. Currently, we have about 42 districts that have, let me say, have an extra push, extra investment in resources to scale up nutrition. So this is 42 out of the 116. So if we are not able to mobilize the same level of push for the other districts, this is both from government and cooperating partners and all the players, we may end up with a SUN 3, yes, but we still have to look at how do we help make sure that this approach is able to be scaled up in all the 116 districts. This is what will determine whether we go to SUN 3. And then it's also important to note that the scaling up nutrition is about known interventions that we're scaling up, and also having our beneficiaries practice. For example, you don't need so much money to make you have your baby exclusively breastfeed. It's one of the interventions. So even the mothers and children and the family members can actually help us in scaling up this, and then spend on just the very few areas that really need resources. So scaling up nutrition 3, potentially, if we don't mobilize the resources to reach the other districts.
Right, Ruth, thank you so much for making it to our studios, and we hope our tea was hot enough for this kind of weather that we are experiencing nowadays. So we would like to thank you very much for taking time off your very busy schedule to come and be with us on this edition of the program. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, and you're most welcome.
Great. So there you have it. We've been looking at how the EU and UNICEF are collaborating as part of the Scaling Up Nutrition Alliance against malnutrition. My guest has been Ruth Siyandi, a nutrition specialist with UNICEF. And of course, if you want to still follow this particular topic and the many that we have had on this program, you can easily hook up with us at EU Formulimi on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. You can get to understand what particular project is aiming at, and looking at all these subjects that we've tackled on this particular edition of the program Tea na EU, every Wednesday at 7:30, and of course Fridays. My name is Dennis Ilukena. Let's look forward to yet another day that we'll be having tea.